Number 4.
So 3B just says that price and demand.
Yeah, price and demand. Question 4. One problem with linear models such as those proposed in question 1 is that the interpretation of the estimated parameters is intimately connected with the units of measurement of the included variables. When weekly income rises by 10 pence, average family bread consumption rises by 10 half-peck loaves per week. So you immediately, we don't even use those units anymore. A half-peck loaf is the amount of bread that can be made with a bit less than a half-peck of wheaten flour, or about 8 pounds, 11 ounces of flour. Everybody, of course, knows that right off the top of their head. It's common knowledge, right? So if you're not attuned to that kind of arcana, then instead we use elasticities, which, of course, you recall from principles of economics, are unitless. So that if the price of bread goes up 10%, you can talk about the quantity of bread demand going down by, 5%, inelastic. So, the usual practice in such circumstances is to discuss elasticities evaluated at the sample means. Calculate the following based on your estimates of the second model. The income elasticity of bread consumption, that is to say, what happens to the percentage quantity of bread consumed when your income goes up by some percent. The uncompensated own price elasticity of bread consumption, the compensated own price elasticity of bread consumption. How many people have had the econ theory course? I guess it's 601 is the first micro theory course. How many people have had George Leidy for econ theory? Then you surely know the difference between compensated and uncompensated demands. Hicksian and Marshallian, they're also referred to as. That's Bowman's class? So what's the difference between compensated and uncompensated demands?
Isn't compensated is, I guess it's more, we look at it for Social Security, if there's different change in price, you'd be given a larger stipend for your Social Security, so
okay.
I guess.
In fact, Social Security recipients are getting a 5% increase this year. 5.6%. Think of it this way. Suppose that your mother gives you an allowance every Monday morning to buy lunch during the course of the week, which she does. Okay? So Hone says that every Monday morning, his mother takes a roll of bills out of her apron and she peels off a $5 bill and says, Hone, here's your allowance for the week for lunch. Don't spend it all on Monday. It's got to last you till Friday. So he's found a food truck. He still works for the gas works, right? So he's found a food truck right around here somewhere where he can buy a cup of coffee and a soft pretzel for 50 cents a piece. So his lunch every day is a cup of coffee and a soft pretzel. And by Friday, he's completely exhausted his $5 allowance. Price of coffee. So he comes to school on Monday morning with his nice, freshly pressed $5 bill that he got from his mother that morning, and goes to the food truck and he discovers that the price of coffee has risen. So what we observe is that when the price of coffee rises to $1, he only buys 2 cups of coffee the whole week because the price of coffee went up. And he's got $3 left for pretzels, he buys 6. So he's pretty parched by the end of the week, eating all that salt on the soft pretzels and only having 2 cups of coffee, which kind of dehydrate you anyway. But he makes it through the week. On Sunday evening, he says, Ma, as only a Philadelphian can do, Ma, we got to sit down and talk about my weekly allowance. The price of coffee has gone up. I need to be compensated for the increase so that I can be restored to my original indifference curve. And she understands perfectly because she came to Temple as well. And so he says, I need a raise in my weekly allowance so that I can be restored to my original indifference curve. And so she gets out her Excel spreadsheet and she looks up the utility function, Hone's utility function that she was given when he was born. That's part of the printout that the hospital attaches to the back of the bill. That and the parenting manual. How many of you have kids? Nobody has kids. Well, and you know that you have you got a parenting manual from the hospital. And I'm sure that you told your kids that when they're complaining about what they have to do and not have to do, or the way you behave, and you just say, oh, that's what it says in the child ownership manual that I was given at the hospital. So she looks up his utility function in the child ownership manual, and she gets out her Excel spreadsheet. She's able to figure out how much additional income to give him to restore him to his original indifference curve. That doesn't mean that he's going to buy 5 coffees and 5 pretzels as he did previously. It just means that whatever combination he's got, with the higher price of coffee and the extra compensation, he can buy another combination on the same indifference curve that he was on before. And so when you plot the price-quantity pairs that you get after that kind of compensation goes on, you get a compensated demand curve. If his mother had said on that Sunday evening when he said, "Yo, Mom, we got to talk," if she had said, "Hone, I don't want to hear it. Make do with what you have," and we plotted those price-quantity pairs, that would be uncompensated demand. And the idea is that you can compute the income and the size of the income and substitution effects between the choices that Hone has made, compensated and uncompensated. And of course, the income and the substitution effect elasticities are going to differ depending on which demand curve we're talking about. So in order to answer those, you need a little bit of background, which is up here in the The uncompensated own price elasticity of demand is for the ith good. It's the price of the ith good over quantity times the change in demand with respect to price. That's pretty plain. That's the way we teach our students to compute elasticities in principles of microeconomics. No big deal about that. And so the rate of change of Q with respect to P is just a slope coefficient from the regression line that you fit. And then the trick, of course, is picking a particular PQ pair that you want to use. And most often people use the mean price and the mean quantity, although you could pick any pairs if you wanted. The uncompensated cross-price elasticity of demand is done the same way, except now we talk about epsilon ij, price of j divided by the quantity of I, times the partial of q I with respect to pj. Again, the first term is approximated by the sample means. The second term is an appropriate slope coefficient. The income elasticity of demand is defined just the way we teach our students, percentage change in the quantity demanded over percentage change in income. Now comes the harder part, which is to figure out those compensated elasticities. So we need a little bit more nomenclature. We'll define the share of income spent on the ith good as your expenditure on the ith good divided by income. And the typical Irish peasant had no control over the price they paid. They didn't walk down to the butcher or to the baker and bargain over the price that they were going to pay for their goods. These guys are not influential people. Okay, so they take the price that's given to them. So, and they also take their income as given. They didn't have much control over that either. So we'll define the compensated own price elasticity as a percentage change in quantity demanded for a small percentage change in price, while restoring the consumer's real income just enough to leave utility unchanged, get them back onto the same indifference curve. From the Slutsky equation, we can show that the uncompensated own price elasticity of demand is a linear function of the compensated own price elasticity and income elasticity, where the weights come from the factor the consumption shares. What's the Slutsky equation? As distinct from the Slutsky theorem used in statistics. Where do the Slutsky equations come from? You have a utility maximization problem subject to a budget constraint. So you set up a Lagrangian, you take the derivative with respect to the quantities, and you get a set of first-order conditions. And so you can solve the first-order conditions for the income and substitution effects. So the compensated cross-price elasticity is equal to the uncompensated cross-price elasticity minus alpha j times the income elasticity. So we know the uncompensated own price elasticity and the income elasticity, and can solve them for compensated elasticity. The relationship between compensated own and cross-price elasticities is that the sum of the compensated cross-price elasticities has to be 0. And there's a typographic error in understanding why. There's another easy way to solve for the compensated cross-price elasticity. What does this law tell you about the compensated elasticities in the good case? What's it tell you about substitution in any good case? And basically what I was after was some discussion of symmetry and homogeneity in demand. Some other useful facts about elasticities, and that is the income elasticity for the ith good weighted by its share in the budget. Those all have to add up to 1. That's the homogeneity condition. The share weighted average of income elasticities is 1, and the income elasticity plus the the uncompensated elasticities has to be 0. And some of the uncompensated and compensated elasticities has to be equal to income elasticity. And these guys were all subsistence tenant farmers. Income and prices were out of their control and therefore exogenous, so those were some useful hints. So let's continue on question 4. So let's see what answers we got for question 4. So it turns out that the income elasticity of demand for bread was 0.489. That's the first entry up here. The uncompensated elasticity of demand for bread was minus 1.013. So that means that if the price of bread goes up 1%, the quantity demanded goes down by a tiny bit more than 1%. The compensated elasticity turns out to be minus 0.685. So that if you raise the price of bread 1% and then restore their income sufficiently to return them to the original level of utility, they're going to reduce their consumption of bread by 0.68%. The cross-price elasticity between bread and meat is just about 1, numerically equal to 1. So the moral of the story is that there was there's scant evidence that bread was a given good in that period, despite the speculation.